Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Villa, No Filler. Please remember to like and subscribe. Triple underline the subscribe. Well, big news again. It's all after a very, very quiet summer. The last week seems to have got very noisy indeed as we approach the first game of the season. Now, in this, I am going to talk about one or two of those transfer rumours, and then I am going to look at Villa's squad and figure out, all right, how are we looking going into this season now, with one or two absences now seemingly on the cards, and how might we line up against Newcastle United, and indeed how they might threaten us as well. But just quickly, well, we all know what the big story of the day is, don't we? Jacob Ramsey has reported that Aston Villa and Newcastle have agreed an upfront fee of £39 million, or for those in the US, close to $53 million, along with a further £5 million in harder to achieve add-ons. So ultimately, it could end up being about £44 million, that deal. Seen it reported elsewhere, it could also rise to about 43 million. So 43, 44 is what it could eventually reach. It's probably at kind of the 40 million mark where it really is, for now at least. So elsewhere, he said, Jacob Ramsey said, Villa, who will compete in this season's Europa League, are selling to help the club comply with UEFA's squad cost rules and football earnings rule. More on that in a sec. He added that last season, Ramsey played 45 games across all competitions and scored 1 goal and 5 assists in the league after struggling with injuries. So, yes, SCR, FER, we all know that clubs can't spend 70% of their overall revenue on player wages. So Aston Villa have been substantially over that in the last few years. You know, it's only really in the last 2 years that it feels like Aston Villa have finally started to get their act together on revenues. Now, before I go further on to that, can I just say that, you know, doing a football podcast, how utterly fed up I am talking about accounts and revenues. These are the type of things that I, as a football fan, did not. When I first went to Villa Park in the year 1992 to see us play against Mike Walker's Norwich City, who came third that season and Villa came second. When I got there, I didn't walk out going, well, I really hope the balance sheet looks good. Or well, I can't wait to find out what the squad cost ratio is for all these players. No, I didn't. I don't think anyone did. And if they did, they probably need to be sectioned. Basically, what I would say is that unfortunately, football has gone down this route, and you know, we all know the reason for it, because a nation state took over Manchester City. That then threatened the, you know, at the time established top 4. It's now a kind of so-called big 6. And then a nation state took over PSG. Same thing again. They turned up and they bought Barcelona, one of Barcelona's best players in Neymar, for nearly 200 million quid. So these nation states were distorting football to such a degree that essentially something had to be done to prevent it from being utterly destroyed rapidly. I actually kind of think it's on the pathway to being in real trouble anyway, because I think the Club World Cup is live golf football. It's a nation state, you know, funded event from Saudi Arabia. And I think that the great threat to football right now is from the Club World Cup and what the major clubs around the world will want out of it, the money that's on offer from it. They'll want it more regularly. And Saudi Arabia, if they're funding it, they'll want it in Saudi Arabia. And what will that mean? Well, a tournament will be hosted during the winter at some point. Sorry to start off on a bit of a negative, but there is just, you know, some frustration in thinking that, well, the way the rules have gone now, because essentially they've come in to stop nation states destroying football immediately. Unfortunately, that's led to teams who were good at an arbitrary moment in time, which was 2010, 2011. They essentially have kind of inbuilt advantages where they can build the revenues because they get Champions League or European football quite regularly. And then when teams like Aston Villa break through, it's harder because, you know, on the one hand, you have to spend a lot to get into it. And then on the next hand, once you're into it, you've got all these rules to abide by, you know, with squad cost ratio. And it's very difficult to keep on competing in that under those circumstances. But those are the rules, and we got to figure a way around it. And I think Aston Villa have, you know, they're making moves towards doing that, and selling Jacob Ramsey probably is part of that. Firstly, it, you know, Applies to PSR, which is still in for another year within the Premier League before it moves to the squad cost ratio rule as well in the 26-27 season. But for 25-26, we are going to still be looking at June 30th and wondering how we're looking. And this already, pure profit, £40 million. It just sick to my stomach having to think that, the onus now is on clubs to have a good academy, not to bring through these players and, establish them in the first team and become local heroes. No, instead it's to just sell them as early as you can, or to, get them in for a year or two and then, aim to sell them for as much as possible because, that's the nature of pure profit. Yeah, so in one way, to see Jacob Ramsey go, he's one of our own. He's been at Villa, from throughout his life. He's a Villa fan. He was there at St Andrews when Jack Grealish scored that goal. He was, going mad in the away end. It's sad to see him go. I am gutted about that, and I think that he is a loss to the squad. I know that his numbers weren't great, and he hasn't really kicked on for the last 2 years since that foot injury. But I still think that as a player who is just a physical impact on the pitch, I described him the other day as a finisher, which I think in modern day football, I think now that squads are bigger, you have 5 substitutes. I think players now, there are some players who are specialists for that 30-minute period and the 60-minute period at the start of a game and 30 minutes. And I think that Ramsey had sort of established himself at Villa as that kind of 30-minute impact player, and him coming on and running direct at a defence, breaking the lines and getting to the byline and pulling it back against a tight defence, just being physical and hustle bustle and running at them. That was very effective and something that Aston Villa, I described it last season as the Villa stampede. I think it was good that Villa had that physicality because I think at times Villa can look a little bit, if you were to say what's our potential weakness, I think sometimes we look a little bit lacking in that physical aspect of the game. I think signing Onana has helped in that regard. I think, having McGinn there helps. I think Ramsey was a part of that. Rodgers is a part of it. But losing Ramsey does mean we lose that impact player. And I look at this weekend against Newcastle. And when I thought of that game last week, I think having Ramsey on the bench and a lack of kind of disruption over the summer, we haven't really lost any key players until right now. I thought, I think people are going to be underestimating Villa and how well we can start the season. Now, looking at it, I look at that bench and I look at, I think that we're still, unfortunately, we're not quite ready squad-wise, and I will get to the squad in a second and describe that more. But I think losing Ramsey, particularly for this weekend, actually is a bit of a problem just for what he could have done as an impact player or as a starter. But I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth in a moment. But yes, I think Ramsey, if his salary demands were to such a level that Villa simply can't pay it, let's say he wanted over 100k a week, 100, I don't know, what's Luca Dean reportedly been on in previous years, 120k a year, a week. If he's around that ballpark and Villa can't pay it because of the nature of the SCR rules, and maybe Villa don't think he's actually worth that, and Newcastle willing to pay it, well, that's the nature. That's a job, isn't it? Football's a job. Footballers look at football differently to how we look at it. They have to have a certain dispassionate separation from things sometimes and think about things long term, think about things in a different way to how we do. He gets another year of Champions League football. I think his style of football does suit Newcastle. That, again, hard running, fast, big impact side. I think he suits that. I think he'll do pretty well there probably as a squad player. He'll start a fair few games, but I don't think he'll be an established starter ahead of their midfield 3 right now. So yeah, sad to see him go. It's a lot of money coming in. I've seen some tweets going around that Villa won't be able to spend any of that. I think that where Villa probably are is that, we've just bought Evan Guessond. So in a way, maybe we've already bought a replacement for Ramsey. Maybe a player who's slightly more dynamic than Ramsey is. But I envision that, given the links to Marco Asensio and Villa's known desire to have a versatile defender, I think Villa probably can still sign a player, and loans might be on the cards. You've seen links to Leandro Trossard. I don't know whether Trossard would be an alternative to Marco Asensio. I would imagine Trossard would be a loan, just my hunch, if it were to happen. But if Villa were to end up with, let's say, Trossard and Asensio on loan, and then signing a centre back who's versatile, physical, and can be a proper competition at last for Ezri Konsa, well, then I think Aston Villa's squad looks, good. But I'll get to that again in a second, because what I do want to talk about just now is that Leon Bailey. Fabrizio Romano reporting that Roma are pushing in talks to Leon Bailey as more discussions will follow with his agents. It's not an alternative option to Jadon Sancho, as Roma are working on both. Now, he's reporting that Besiktas are not in active talks as of now, as they only asked for the deal conditions last week. Sorry, the way he's written that tweet is absolutely makes no sense, barely any sense. Fast finger there. Had one or too many red wines in the sun or something. I don't know. But Florian Plettenberg, German-based reporter, has said that he understands that Besiktas have seriously entered the race for Bailey and talks are ongoing. And they've informed Villa of his interest. And he also adds that Bailey's contract runs to 2027. I've said previously, I think that Bailey's time at Villa's done. I think last season was dreadful. I think he's had 4 seasons at Villa now. 1 world-class season, 2, to be quite frank, poor to middling seasons. 1 disastrous season last year, I would put it. But that 3rd season was absolutely world-class. And there's no denying that his fantastic performances in that year helped drive Aston Villa to Champions League football. He was one of the best players in world football that year. Unfortunately, last year he simply wasn't. And 3 out of 4 years, it's not a great return, is it? Yes, he could turn it around this season, maybe. But if Aston Villa are in a situation where they look at him in pre-season and think, I don't think this is going to be turned around, it felt like Emery kind of gave up on the guy from about January onwards. It sort of feels like if someone can take these wages, I think, and they're going to be substantial wages as well, if someone's willing to take these off the books, then every little helps. And if it means we can go and get a player like an Asensio, cool, good. But I do have a little bit of reticence, just wondering, are Villa losing a little bit too much pace when Bailey and Ramsey go? We shall see. Now, yes, I think what I'll say about it, look, it's just my personal opinion. I wish Jacob Ramsey very well. He's one of our own. Look, I don't wish him well when he plays Aston Villa, of course, but I do wish him well going forward. And whenever he comes back to Villa Park, I hope that we can, give him a decent reception and thank him for all the stuff he's done. He's given us some really fun memories at Aston Villa. I think he really looked like he was kicking on to be an England player or for the full England team 2 years ago. He was him, Moreno down the left, along with Watkins scoring goals and Douglas Luiz. Ramsey and Moreno down that left were a real catalyst and real driver towards Aston Villa getting European football in that first season that Unai Emery came into Villa and turned it around from Gerrard's disastrous turn in charge. But it feels like since he got that foot injury that summer, it really inhibited him. He missed an entire season, really. And last year just wasn't really able to, he played a lot, but he wasn't really able to get the run of starts he maybe wants or needs to get back to the level or get to the level eventually where he thinks he can get to, or where maybe we think he can get to. But, I wish him well going forward, and apart from when he plays Aston Villa, of course. Now, let's get to the tactical pad and just look quickly at the squad. And I've gone over this a little bit, but things have changed now that Ramsey's gone. And I'm also going to look at my theorised starting 11 for Newcastle. So, look, Dean Maatsen at left back, that's what it is. Maatsen had usurped Luca Dean in that left back role towards the end of last season. So I'm going to say Maatsen starts again against Newcastle. He certainly did it in the 4-1 win. He scored a brilliant goal, if I recall correctly, and he was excellent in that game. So there's not really a lot he's done to deserve it to be dropped. Mings and Pau Torres, I think Torres will start. Bogard and Konsa's going to start. Martinez, Bezo. Well, Bezo obviously will start because Martinez is suspended. Garcia looks like he's injured, so Cash at the back. So my back 4, I think, is Maatsen, Pau Torres, Konsa, and Matty Cash. I think defensively, when you look at Villa's squad, 2 keepers strong, Bezo and Martinez, very good, and hopefully Bezo can actually help push for Martinez's place and help Martinez rise to the level that he. The world's number 1 become the universe's number 1. Torres and Mings, good contrasting players. Konsa and Bogard. I think we need another right centre back. I just do. Right back, Matty Cash, Andres Garcia. It is what it is. Yes, I think we'd all want to see a world-class right back coming in one day, but Cash is that somewhat athletic, dependable right back, and I just think it's probably going to be the way it goes now that he is our right back for the next season, unless Andres Garcia can force his way through. Garcia is also linked away, but I sort of don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, midfield, really strong. Tielemans, Barkley, McGinn, Onana, Kamara. Lots and lots of teams. And also George Hemmings coming through. And I think Hemmings will play a fair bit this season if he sticks around and doesn't go on loan. So, yeah, I think this weekend, I thought at first it'd be Onana on the bench, Kamara, Tielemans starting, McGinn up in far left, and Rodgers in that central role. I'm now wondering whether it'll be Onana and Kamara and Tielemans a bit further forward, just for that physical battle. But I'm going to say Kamara and Tielemans start and Onana starts on the bench, I think. Barkley, I'm not even sure if he's fit. John McGinn, well, I think he'll go up into the front left area. Now, front left, well, Jacob Ramsey, you're gone, mate. He's gone. So now we're looking at left role and we think, well, who's our available options? John McGinn has played there. I think he can play well there, but he's not the ideal player there because he's not really a player who has that penetrating, head down sprinting kind of style, which is now I've been saying I think Gesson will be a right winger or maybe in the Diaby role. I think he'll play up front at times this season. He's very versatile. I'm now half wondering if he's going to play in that Ramsey role on the left, because these are the options now for Villa on the left. It's Rodgers, Gesson, McGinn, and Illing Jr. Illing Jr. probably on loan, I would say. So then you go into Rodgers, McGinn, and Gesson. I'm going to guess that John McGinn starts on Saturday and say he plays on the left. And I'm going to say Rodgers starts and hopefully is fit and plays central behind Watkins. And I'm going to say Gesson starts on the bench. And I'm going to say out on the right then it's going to be, I think, Marlon. Buendia on the bench as well. Bailey, probably not even in the squad. Zepikena Redmond, he's not going to be in there. So that's my theorised starting lineup for Aston Villa this weekend. Bezo, Matson, Pau Torres, Ezri Konsa, Matty Cash, Kamara Tielemans, McGinn, Rodgers, Daniel Marlin, and Ollie Watkins. Maybe Tielemans could play in that support role. Rodgers could go out left. Onana could then go into the CM role alongside Kamara. That is always a possibility. But then you look at Villa's bench, and there's not loads of game changes. I mean, you got Luca Dean, Tyrone Mings, Emi Buendia, Illing Jr. Then it's kind of like not many. Everyone Gesson and Onana. I mean, Gesson would be an interesting one because Newcastle. It's difficult for Newcastle to prepare for him. So I think Gesson will be interested. Be a bit of a wild card this weekend, and I wouldn't be surprised if he turns up in his debut and does a really good job and creates a chance or scores a goal. But I think losing Ramsey for this weekend actually is a bit of an impact, and I think it is illustrative that Villa are going to need just something else in that forward position. So if I look back at it again, Gesson as the option. Buendia as a kind of second striker role. Looks like he's going to be sticking around. Villa aren't massively well stocked in those forward areas. So I think the Asensio loan is likely. John Percy reporting it. I think there probably is something to that. I think in Asensio, and I would like to see someone with a bit of pace in there as well come in if Bailey is off, as we think he is. So we take him out. Suddenly, I just think one more up there at least would be really helpful. I'm not sure Trossard is it. I like Trossard. He's a very good player. If he turned up at Villa on loan, I'd be pretty excited about it. But what's his position? Because when I think of Trossard, he clings to the left touchline. That's what he does. So, I'd be interested to see what the idea would be if he came into Villa. Because yes, he's played up front, he's played as an attacking midfielder, he's played central, he has done that, and maybe that'll be the role that he'd play at Villa. And because quite frankly, when we have left wingers, they don't cling to the touchline, do they? But yeah, let me know what you think. Please like, please subscribe, and please let me know what you think about Villa's present squads. I just wonder, on the one hand, there's been real continuity from last season, which is really great. Other than Ramsey leaving, we've added Evan Gesson. Rashford's gone. That's obviously a shame. Asensio, it looks like he's going to be coming back, hopefully. But just one more. Lee Kang in on loan from PSG. I'd take that. If it was, are we allowed to loan 2 players from one team? Unless we sign Asensio and loan Lee Kang in. That would please me. That would please me. Great goal he got for PSG against Spurs last night. But up front as well, I think Gesson and Marlon will play those roles, as a support striker to Watkins as well. So I don't think we need another striker, to be honest. I think if I just look at that left role and wonder, is Rodgers going to be out there now for the foreseeable, or do we need something else there? That's just what I wonder. Let me know what you think. And, I'll just quickly look at Newcastle and what they might do. I mean, look, we all know what Newcastle are, right? They're hustle, they're bustle, they are Fowley, they're roughhouse, they have real quality centrally, but they run hard at you. And if you play Newcastle, you have got to start fast. That is what we have proven in recent years playing against them. Now, I'm just going to put their 4 players on for now. So centrally, Guimaraes, Tonali, Joe Linton. I'm going to say Anthony Elanga starts. Maybe Jacob Murphy plays up there. Both of them are very good options. Anthony Gordon out left, or it'll be him or Harvey Barnes. Now, the options are for them. Anthony Gordon goes at top because obviously Isak's not available. Or Asula. And Asula is a player that's not that well known. I saw him at Sheffield United. He was good there. I saw why he got signed onto the Premier League. I saw him play for Newcastle last season a few times. I do distinctly remember him playing against Birmingham City, in which he was excellent. Very physical player. Works really hard. Good with his back to goal, and is what I would describe as a skillful, physical handful. Is he Alexander Isak up front? No. Have we got a bit of an advantage there? Isak not playing? Well, absolutely. Bench-wise, in the attacking areas, if Anthony Gordon starts out left and Asula starts up top, well, then it's Harvey Barnes who could come on and make an impact. And if Elanga starts, well, maybe it could be Jacob Murphy comes on and makes an impact. Centrally, I doubt Jacob Ramsey will be available, thankfully for us. But centrally, there's not a great deal of other options for them, really. I mean, I think Joe Willock is injured. So, that's probably sort of what it will be. They run so hard and foul so much that if referees wise up to it finally this season, they might get a bit caught out, Newcastle. The thing for Villa is that the way we've beaten them the last 2 times at Villa Park, 3-0, what happened? Villa started really fast and scored really early. Went on and won 3-0. Last time, when we beat them in April, 4-1, what happened? Ollie Watkins was absolutely on fire. Started hard, started fast, and got that early goal. And the thing is with Newcastle, if Villa get that early goal at Villa Park, it then means it disrupts Newcastle's game plan, because what Newcastle want to do, like when they beat us at Villa Park a year and a half ago, 3-1, what they like to do is that if they get an early goal or a set-piece goal or whatever, they like to fall back into a kind of 4-5-1 shape. It's very flat. It looks quite uninspired, I think, sometimes. But it is effective in stopping other teams playing and then them being able to hit you on the break with their hard runners like Gordon and Langer on the wing. A central player like Tonali, who's absolutely world-class, never stops, presses teams really hard, keeps pushing forward all the time. and then they can whip a ball into an Asula or whatever, or try and hit you, on a set piece and get a second and put the game away. Because what I remember when they did it to us, that 4-5-1, and they took that lead against us, what was happening was that Villa simply, in Douglas Luiz, I remember, was in centre midfield while Tielemans was in the support role. Tielemans looked like just was so isolated between Newcastle's back four and then midfield five that Luiz just could not pick a thread of pass through to him. So we've shown that you can't allow Newcastle really to do that, because they can punish you for it. There's a reason they're in the Champions League. There's a reason they keep getting into it in 2 out of the last 3 years. But if Villa start fast, and Ollie Watkins has looked in absolutely red-hot form in pre-season. So if we start fast, and Watkins in particular leads from the front, gets an early goal, and Maatsen pulling down the left, forcing Elanga or Jacob Murphy, into working hard defensively from the off, which is probably not what you want hoping to do on the first day of the season. If we can do that with Maatsen, getting down there, getting to the byline, whipping balls across. If Marlon can pin back, I assume it would be Lewis Hall maybe at left back. Well, then hopefully that is a way that Villa can, take it to Newcastle, get an early goal, and then from there start to impose ourselves by playing really good football and just tiring Newcastle out with their, helter-skelter chase that they like to do in the middle. Little bit, I can't, I think I'm always a bit nervous before the season starts with Villa, only because, I'm always so desperate for us to win, and you just don't know what's coming. I was nervous before West Ham away last season, and then we went and won 2-1. And, you can very easily forget how good we are. And if Villa can just start fast this weekend, outplay Newcastle in the same way we did a few months ago when we won 4-1, and assert ourselves with confidence and playing good football, well, then there's every reason to believe we can go into this game and win it, comfortably. But Newcastle are not a team who make it easy, and there will be lots of fouls. It'll be very physical, and it is, I think, very, very important for Villa not to concede an early goal, because if we do, well, then it's hard to get back against them. But even if we do, I still believe in this Villa team. I've seen a few people being a bit, a little bit sort of, down entering this season. I get that. I mean, particularly losing Jacob Ramsey feels a bit like that. It does feel right now that Aston Villa's squad isn't quite fully ready. The best thing is our consistency from last season. We've still got a lot of the players who were there last season. A lot of the key players haven't really lost, I would argue, any of our truly key players. I think that's actually going to be a big advantage to us. I think the only way, and I think that will really help us to keep on competing this season and going far in competitions, and hopefully starting the season relatively quickly. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe a couple of patchy results early on in the season as we try to complete our transfer business by the end of August, and therefore might have to wait 3 or 4 games before we've got the full contingent of options that we really want in the positions we want them in. Asensio coming in, for instance. Has he played in pre-season? I don't even know. He's a naturally fit guy, but it's going to take him a little while to get up to speed, isn't it? And, Evan Gesson as well, new signing. I'm really excited to see what he can do. And I think he could be a game changer on Saturday in the way that losing Ramsey worries me a bit. Gesson is an unknown quantity, full of confidence, want to impress. I think he could be a real game changer and maybe win the game for us this weekend. That's what I would say to him if I was Unai Emery. Go win it. But yeah, squad-wise, I just think whilst there's a lot of consistency from last season, I feel like the full contingent of options aren't fully there until maybe the 3rd or 4th week. And that's when I think Villa might start to show the absolutely electric consistency that we had from about February onwards last year. If we can get another defender, particularly a right centre-back, to compete with Konsa and push him to the higher level that he can get to, if we can get another attacking player, Asensio and another one, if that's 3 players we can get in, then I think Villa are really starting to look like a team who can do a lot of good things this season. Little bit of a game changer this week. Tottenham potentially signing Eberechi Eze. That does worry me. I've got to be honest. I saw Tottenham has been a team that, well, 8 Champions League games. Is it perhaps the playoff games? They've got to have. They might go far in it. Thomas Frank has no experience really of Europe, balancing Europe and the Premier League. They are a bit of an injury-prone side. I was kind of thinking it might be a step far for them to match or balance all of that. But if they get Eze, I think he's a massive upgrade on James Maddison. I think he's a far better player. I think he's a world-class player, Eze. Every time I watch him, I'm blown away by him. I think that'd be a big signing for Tottenham. Big. And that does then start to make competition for the top 6 very competitive indeed, because Manchester United have no midweek games this year. That's going to advantage them, you would think. Still a few question marks over them, but they're going to be better this season, almost certainly. And then Newcastle, again, I'm not sure how well they can balance up their hard-running style with European football, Champions League football, and the Premier League. But if they can, and with a bigger squad, maybe they will. I personally have a lot of doubt they will. I still think their style of play is just so hard running and physical that it's just going to lead to, injuries. I sort of think that's them getting Ramsey, they're still going to be competitive, right? So Villa have to start faster this season. We do, and we can't have that spell we had from October through to early January last season where we kept drawing and losing stupid games because we kept giving the ball away constantly, playing it out the back. This season, we have got to ensure that we repeat defensively what we did from February through to the end of the year, and that was retaining the ball a bit better up the pitch. That was a real problem early on in the season, and I've explained my reasons why previously, why I theorised it was. And defensively, playing out the back, we were giving the ball away constantly, conceding stupid goals in the first 10 minutes all the time. If we cut that out, as we did from February last year, and we consistently, don't give away stupid goals all year and continue to play the kind of free-flowing, excellent football that we have shown we're capable of, Aston Villa can do really special things this season. I'm excited. I think it might be a little bit of an itsy-bitsy start in the way it could be while we wait for our full contingent of options, but that's just the way it goes. Look, I've rambled on long enough. God, I can talk for bloody England, can't I? If this was an Olympic sport, it's probably the only Olympic sport I could ever have dreamt in competing in. That and tiddlywinks. I was rubbish at that as well. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching, listening. Please please subscribe, please comment. Reiterate the point: the YouTube algorithm is it's changed, and it's, to my mind, quite stupid. But all the likes, comments, interactions, all that help. I love doing this. I love meeting fellow Villa fans, and if we could just keep on growing and meeting more Villa fans doing it, well, then brilliant. Because I basically do this because I love doing it, and I love Aston Villa, and I have such a passion for the Villa. And the best thing's been meeting fellow Villa fans. Honestly, it's been just absolutely amazing. Going to Villa Park, meeting fellow Villa fans, and I really want to keep on doing it. So yeah. Anyway, thought I'd say that. Anyway, thank you very much, and onward to Newcastle, up the mighty Villa.